Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Welcome back to Crypto Crayfish. Today I'm super excited to talk to you on this fine Wednesday with news and a bunch of things going on in the crypto world. Let's get started here. We are going to do a little bit of a slideshow. And today we're going to be talking about Ethereum loading the boat. So maybe you have been feeling recently watching Bitcoin go up, let's say 10% in a day. Yesterday it went from 80 to 90K. Today it's up to 93. Maybe you've been feeling a little bit of FOMO, a little bit like, I wish I had bought more at 15K. I wish I had bought any at 50K 3 months ago. All this type of stuff. It's easy to feel like that when the king, Bitcoin, starts moving. It is overwhelming. It can be going so fast, and it can feel like, oh yeah, next dip I'll definitely get in. And maybe it doesn't dip for months or for 20K. Maybe you're looking at it. I know when the breakout happened at around 74, above last few years all-time high, there was talk of, oh yeah, I'll get it on a pullback. And here we are, we've run all the way to 93 without a pullback. Really, other than yesterday, back to like 86, which is not much of a pullback. So it can feel really hard. It can feel like you're chasing a market, and that's not something that you want to do. It depends on, how long you've been in the space, but generally, as Wall Street Bets would say, buy low, sell high, right? And a lot of people know that, they talk about that, but they don't follow their own advice, right? When something starts to move, it's tempting to buy it. And when something's down in the dumps, getting red, struggling every day, it's tough to buy it. It's tough to have the conviction there. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you first a little bit of how I've done that in the past with stocks, and why I believe Ethereum is what you can be doing that into now. I think Bitcoin, I've got no problems with it. I think there's some real pros of Bitcoin. I think overall it does lead the crypto market. But because of that, I also think there's diminishing returns, and I think we've played out a lot of the Bitcoin cycle. If you look at Bitcoin dominance, we're at all-time highs today. We're at over 61%, including stables. And that is pretty wild. That's right around where it's probably going to turn around. We could go a few percent higher. But we are getting towards that alt-season rotation out of Bitcoin. And that doesn't mean that the USD valuation is going to go down, but it means that altcoins are going to start going up much more. And that has not been the case for the past 2 years. So that's important to talk about. Let's start with some stocks. So these are a few buys that I wanted to show you. One, I'm going to move my little camera up here. All right, so these are from my actual investment account. One here is Shopify. If you were following at all yesterday, they, of course, slammed earnings. They've beat earnings the last 9 quarters. And they ripped 25% yesterday. They are all the way up at around $112 a share. And so the point of showing you this is, back in 2022, it was pretty bloody, pretty tough for growth stocks, especially as the interest rate hiking environment began. And I, started buying. As you can see, I was buying in February. I'd owned Shopify before, but I was buying at like $72 a share, which wasn't bad considering it had gone to 160 earlier that year. And it pulled back, over 60% right there. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm probably getting a decent valuation. And the dip just kept dipping. You probably have experienced that or seen things do it before. But I held my conviction. I felt confident in this as a growth stock. I felt confident the earnings would come back. And so you can see I continue to buy all the way down into the 30s. I bought some in the 50s as well in my other account. And so that's just, an example of kind of what you need to think about. You need to have a set plan and you need to stick to it. And you need to really take advantage of those buying opportunities, because now looking years later, all of this is, 240% up. And That's huge, right? But not that many people caught that, because when things fall out of favor, they don't want to buy it, right? They feel like, oh, maybe it'll never come back in favor. And so it's about figuring out what is going to return to favor and buying it when it is not in favor. And that is something that's much easier said than done. So Tesla's a great example as well. We can move on down to this one. I was buying, down below $200, and now we're ripping up to around 350, and people are just starting to look at it, just starting to get in. People are late with their longs, right? And I've been sitting on these shares a long time. I mean, it's been years, but the conviction was there. And Tesla actually is fun to watch because it moves oftentimes like crypto. It does these huge consolidation phases for years, and then when it moves, it can move insane amounts. And so, yeah, I guess the point here is to really think about, how am I going to set myself up for success emotionally, to be able to purchase when the times are hard and not buy in, not FOMO, not chase, when something starts going crazy. If you miss something, that is okay. It's much, much better to miss it altogether and focus on the next thing than to, chase and end up sitting for a 50% loss that you've got to either wait multiple years to get out of or sell at the bottom and take a lot of losses. So those are some good examples. That's good examples in stocks. And now let's talk about how it relates to crypto. Sorry, it's not moving forward here. All right, cool. So let's get to our thesis. Really, to give you the ideas, we'll just read through these bullet points and then we'll kind of get to the big if-then statement and what that means. So first thing, Bitcoin will be higher a year from today than today. And that statement is really based on cycles. So cycle theory. You, with Bitcoin and the crypto space, have these 4-year cycles that are really, really wonderful and helpful. And if you're new to the space, that's really why I think it's a huge way to be able to make money, because it is far more predictable than stocks, right? Stocks in general rely a ton on what's going on with the government, what's going on in that sector, what's going on with that individual company. Crypto, by comparison, every 4 years in the post-halving year, which is 2025, quarter 4, we get a huge blow off top, right? It's massive. And then for about 2 years after that, we're down in the trenches. We often lose. Bitcoin this time lost 77% from the high. And so what that means is, I don't claim to be able to time exact tops and bottoms, not at all. You could see from Shopify and Tesla, I didn't time exact bottoms, but I was getting good valuations by knowing the general trend over years, not over the next day, the next hour, that type of stuff. And that's why I think crypto is really, really great to make a ton of money, is you can load into the market, wait for high risk levels and a blow off top, and then get out of the market and wait till low risk levels again a year or two later. It takes being patient, and some people will do better just buying and holding. But if you want to maximize returns, that's what I'm thinking of doing and looking at. So not a financial advice, but again, my goal is to share with you how I'm actually putting all this into action. Let's go into the next one. ETH BTC. So if you don't know what that is, it's the valuation of ETH over the valuation of Bitcoin on their US dollar pairs. And what that means is the US dollar units cross out and you're left with a ratio. And so essentially it tells you how expensive or cheap Ethereum is compared to Bitcoin. Will be much higher a year from today than today. We are actually about to hit new lows potentially again, or a double bottom on ETH BTC. And that is a trend that's been going on for 2 years and probably will bottom in the next month or two. So that's where those are those inflection points. That is why now is the time. Alt season. Alt season will start at some point between December, as in next month, and the end of 2025. So I don't claim to know when it starts. It depends a lot, I believe, on how the US dollar valuations are looking. Whether the DXY keeps ripping, that'll signal risk off and we'll wait a little bit longer. If it starts to durably fall, I think we will start to get that real mania phase, especially if we get a lot of stimulus from Trump administration as they go into office. So these 3 points I strongly believe to be true. I feel very confident in all of them. That comes from years of research, years of cycle theory, and just where we are at today, what the fundamentals look like, all that type of stuff. Now we've got this if-then statement at the bottom. If all the above tenets are true, then ETH USD will be roughly 3 times higher a year from now than today. Now, the 3 times higher, take it with a grain of salt. I have no idea where it's going to top, where exactly it's going to head to, but the point is that it will be much, much higher a year from now than today. And that's really what I care about, right? I care about capturing the move. No matter where that move necessarily goes, I feel confident it's going to be a very strong move. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to see $10,000 price target for ETH next year. And people, if that feels crazy to you, think about, think about Bitcoin going from 15,000 a few years ago, back in 2022 when I was buying it, up to now we're almost at 100K. You can really see huge returns. And so a 3x for something that's a much smaller market cap than Bitcoin actually isn't that crazy. All right, let's move forward here. So now the question becomes, how am I going to play? If I believe this thesis, right, which I do, I've spent years, kind of coming around to this, how am I actually going to play this move, right? If I feel confident this movement exists, how do I want to put my money into action to make more money? And so here we come to choosing a vehicle. Now, this is really, really important because there are some real, especially with crypto, there are some real sketchy challenges in the space, right? We saw FTX collapse this cycle, and people lost everything, right? They're not getting that money back. It's not like it was insured. It's not like people lost hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And that's something that really terrifies me, and I think it should terrify you as well, right? Like, you should be very careful about what actual vehicle you're using to bet on crypto, because if it blows up, that's the only time, right? Your crypto, at the end of the day, do I think Ethereum or Bitcoin or even a lot of alts are ever going to zero? No, I don't. I think Bitcoin will always, it'll have fluctuations. It'll have strong price drawdowns at various times. But at the end of the day, if you buy and hold, I think you are good. A vehicle, if you screw up the vehicle choice, it's the complete opposite, right? You can go from 100 to 0. You wiped out, right? It's all or nothing. And that is why the vehicle is so, so, so important. If you trust the vehicle and you feel like that is safe, it won't fall apart, such as FTX did, then you can feel confident in that you're not taking on further risk other than the asset itself, which is my goal. Okay. So what that means, let's go to this first bullet point. I am running from the use of wallets and exchanges. I believe, and there's this kind of old school theory, right? People who have been in the space a long time, people who are maybe more into the decentralized idea of crypto, the idea of it really as a technology. I think that they will say things like, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, or and so or not your keys, not your crypto. And that's a good example of kind of this old way of thinking where it's like, if you don't have the actual crypto keys, you don't have it in your own personal wallet, it's not yours. And that's true, right? And that's true with a ton of asset classes. And so I think I'm part of maybe a newer generation of crypto holders that doesn't worry me. And so where I'll get to with that, I am not betting on the whole idea that we need to be completely decentralized because the whole government system is going to fall apart. That's not why I am in crypto. I believe crypto is just the newest, freshest, most volatile asset class that exists kind of in the investment world today that's accessible. So think of when we started investing in gold, right? People probably had very similar viewpoints of, if you don't own physical gold, you don't own gold, right? Who knows what's going to happen? And now think about it. No one is looking at a gold ETF in their stock account and being like, oh, that I'm not even owning gold if I buy that, right? Like, the institutions own the gold and I don't own the gold, and therefore I could just go to zero, right? We have enough insurance in the financial system at this point that I believe you can trust that, right? And so that is, I think, a key difference of me from some of the more old school crypto traders. Um, I don't, I find wallets and exchanges more risk adding and more risky than the use of now centralized crypto. And that's some of the reason why this bet makes sense right now of Ethereum, is because we got the Ethereum ETFs and the Bitcoin ETFs. Both are great, right? But those are federally insured in your stock account, viable ways to expose yourself to the crypto moves. And I believe they're much, much, much safer than something even like Coinbase, right? I used to use Coinbase. It's how I bought Bitcoin at 15K, right? But at the end of the day, I have heard horror stories on all the exchanges, but definitely Coinbase as well, of, we all my funds went away, or I staked 3 ETH and I got out when I unstaked 2.5 ETH. And I call people and you're on the phone for months at a time. And at the end of the day, there's no insurance. You are not getting that back. They say, oh, yeah, looks like a weird glitch in the system. Sorry, it's in the waiver you signed, right? And so that is not okay to me. That I am not willing to make a huge bet with my personal finances on an exchange that could completely collapse like FTX, and we could end up with zero, right? So it's totally your decision. I'm not saying that people who use exchanges are incorrect. In fact, they're still required for a lot of things, right? If you're not going to bet on Bitcoin or Ethereum, you need to use your own personal wallet, because there's no ETFs yet for Solana, for Cardano, for other altcoins, for meme coins, all those things. Yes, I recognize the need for it. For me, I am lowering my risk by trusting the vehicle. And I think these ETFs are a great way to do that. It doesn't scare me that I don't hold the actual keys to my crypto. In fact, I would, in a lot of ways, rather not hold the keys to my crypto. I like the idea that I have a protected financial institution like, say, Fidelity holding my keys. And if they get hacked, I get reimbursed, right? But if I get hacked as an individual holding a crypto wallet, I click on some dumb link while I'm scanning Wall Street bets because I'm a degenerate. And here we go. There we go. I have now lost all my life savings that I worked really hard for. So that's my thought about it. Let's move on to the new ETFs. We've talked about them a little bit. The one I put in here is FETH, which is the Fidelity one. What I really like about that, I'm a Fidelity user, so take that with a grain of salt. But I've found Fidelity helplines to be extremely helpful throughout day trading, throughout a bunch of different things over the years. And what I really like about FETH is they custody their own crypto. So rather than using an exchange like Coinbase, which I don't inherently trust, we have this massive financial institution that's doing it themselves, which I appreciate. All right, next question: to leverage or not to leverage? So this is really something I struggled with for months, right? I've been setting up this trade for months, loading out of stock portfolios at high valuations, right? We're at historically high valuations on the S&P. Does that mean it has to pull back? No, valuation is not really a great indicator of the short term, but I do think it means that you're not getting a great price if you're buying into the stock market today. I feel comfortable taking gains up here. And so I've been doing that, preparing for this bet. And what it came down to was, do I leverage or do I not leverage? And really, so if you don't know, there's leveraged ETFs in the space. And these essentially rely on, rather than holding Ethereum as an asset, they trade the futures of Ethereum or the futures of Bitcoin to try and get 2x or 3x the return, That's what you're looking at. And so I've used these on the short end. I've used them on the long. And I guess important things to know about them. They're still by massive funds and banks and places that, have insurance, and they can't guarantee returns. And so returns could erode, and I will monitor that monthly. But at the end of the day, it still feels much, much safer to me than holding in, say, a Coinbase. And so I have decided to leverage. I believe that, I chose my tenants very carefully. We can go back to the thesis, right? If all the above tenants are true, then ETHUSD will be roughly 3 times higher a year from now than today. That's a big move, right? And if I feel really confident in that thesis, which I do, not necessarily the 3 times, but that it will be higher than it is today, then why would I not leverage, right? At the end of the day, if I feel certain that that's where we are going, then I would like outsized returns for that bet, right? And if it doesn't go there, frankly, I'm okay figuring out how to hold for the long term. Maybe I am waiting till next cycle, or say some big black swan happens and we get a failed cycle. But frankly, we had a huge black swan of COVID last cycle, and it didn't change anything. It still was the same exact timing. So I have chosen to leverage. The options are ETH versus ETHU because I want Ethereum, right? That's what I'm going for. I believe Bitcoin, will probably go to 120K or somewhere this cycle. But if you think about that, that from here is another 30% gain. Versus if you think $10,000 Ethereum, that's more than a triple from here. It's a big, big difference. And that's why now is the time for Ethereum, not for Bitcoin. Don't chase Bitcoin. I have chosen ETH because it's a lower expense ratio. It saves me about 1%, and at the amount of money I'm looking to put into it, that could be a large amount of money. It's got a little bit less volume, but frankly, I've found it pretty easy to trade and get in and out. So, all right, and lastly, why this is a play of about 1 year versus long term. So just like we talked about, these leveraged funds aren't meant to be held for the long term. They can erode over time. They don't exactly track because you're trading futures, right? And inherently, that's got some movement to it. And so what that looks is, maybe it's only 0.1% difference in a day, right? But over years, that can really add up. And so that's what I'll be monitoring to make sure it's a good bet for me. If it ever starts to underperform FETH, I will probably switch to FETH, right? That's something that I'm not willing to have a leveraged fund if it's not overperforming the fund's just holding straight Ethereum. And that's the reason for me it's a play of about 1 year. I'd love to get out ideally just after a year so that I have long-term taxes versus short-term holdings. And kind of near when those risk bands get really, really elevated, near the top, to then wait kind of a few years until it's time to get back in. And additionally, I want to get out anyway because these leverage funds aren't meant to be held years on years. All right, this is a breakdown of my net worth at the moment. I told you I would be super honest and upfront with everything I'm kind of holding, and that's what I'm aiming to show you, what my investment net worth looks like. So right now, I took these numbers off my stock portfolio today. I have total net worth in investments of about 116K. Now you'll see 61% of that, $71,500, is in cash. That is what I've raised for this big bet. I am planning on trying to get in about 80K total into leveraged Ethereum ETFs in the next month or two. I really would like to be all in before 2025. I think 2025 is when you could see really strong seasonality for ETH, and you could see alt season really start. Currently, I've got 34,000 in non-crypto, so that's stocks, gold, all that type of stuff. That's just stuff I'm holding on to, not to be out of the market completely. And then you can see I've started to buy over the last month or two. I've constantly been having a little bit of exposure, and following the market very, very closely to try and figure out when really makes sense to be DCAing into Ethereum. And so right now, I'm holding about $8,000 of FETH, which actually I'm going to be looking to transfer over to ETH pretty soon here. FETH is just that Fidelity market fund that holds Ethereum as a whole, so it's not leveraged. And then Ethereum ETH, I have about 2% or about $2,000 in. And actually, I just saw as we're talking, ETH is selling off. And so one of my buy orders just got filled for another $2,000. So we're getting there, right? I'm about 12K into Ethereum right now. And I need to get another, 68K in. So that's a lot. And so I am setting up open orders and buys. And this is a magnitude of bet I have never made before. And that's what's really wild is I have come to this really strong conviction. I think it could change my whole future financially. And so I'm, over years, I've built the conviction for this. Usually I would subscribe to the normal investment thesis of like no more than 10% in one holding. But crypto is a little bit different because it doesn't have that individual stock risk, right? So Ethereum, I feel confident will continue to exist for years and years and years. And so I'm not worried about a bad earnings, right? For me, it's more, are people going to continue to adopt the space? And I think we've seen really, really bullish things in all those fronts, from politics, from ETF adoption, from, the Bitcoin ETF is already above Blackcoin's Bitcoin ETF has more holdings in it now than their gold ETF. And that's existed for, I think almost 100 years. No, maybe not that long, 50 years or something. But regardless, in the first year, Bitcoin ETF has outperformed it. So there's a huge interest in the space. And that's why I think there's such opportunity to make money is so many people are not into it yet. And yet it is on that cusp. It is getting the regulation. It has gotten the ETFs, and now it is safe to get in and to ride up as other people get in. All right, let's move forward here. All right, so these are some of my current open orders. You can see, these are massive down here. 700 shares of ETH at 1820. Right now we're in the low 20s. So this would constitute it going to about $2,900 in ETH. Which I'm hoping that we get one more flush down to around $2,500 in ETH. That's where I would really start to be going all in. But this is the equivalent of about $12,000. So if you look, I've got multiple of those. We're looking on this screen at almost 25K that I'm trying to get in, just in prices near here. So I really think now is the time. And one of the main reasons for that is the ETH Bitcoin valuation. So let's go over to some other things and talk about why now, just to get an idea of really the timing of this, because obviously timing is important. It's really what's going to outsize your returns. So, and again, we're trying to time the broader trends, the broader transition from ETH BTC going down to it going up, rather than exact day trading or exact USD valuation bottoms, those types of things. So let's start over here. We can look at this helpful chart here. Hopefully you guys can see this. So this is the ETH BTC chart, which we talked about. It's basically just a ratio, right? It removes US dollars as a unit. And okay, on one day, you can see we're down a lot today, right? 5% today. That's a big move. And you can see the USD valuations. Bitcoin's at almost 91,000. Ethereum USD is at around 31.7, so just under 3,200. And so you might be saying like, 0.034. I have no frame of reference. How low is that? And if we look at the last week, it's like, oh, look, it went up to 0.04 just last week. Like, no worries. We're kind of just bouncing around. But when you start to zoom out, that's where you really see the trends. So let's zoom out all the way to 6 months here. And this is where you can start to see how brutal this has been if you've chosen to hold ETH. I've been holding only Bitcoin in the crypto space for a while because I knew Bitcoin dominance was going to go up. It's what it does every cycle in this period before alt season comes about, right? And alt season is not usually till the post-halving year. People have gotten ahead of themselves on every little one of these rips up. But look at, so if you look back to even May of this year, we're at 0.056, okay? So 0.056 to 0.034, where we're at today. That's a 40% move down. So if you had held Ethereum this whole time rather than Bitcoin, you would have lost 40%. You would have underperformed Bitcoin by 40%. That is major, major money. So, and then if we zoom out even farther, let's see if I can get like a 5-year. I may have to go to the big chart. Let's see here. So if we look at the, here we go. This is what I need. Sorry, my computer is very slow. All right, here we go. Let's look at a 5-year. So this gives you a good perspective. This is back here, up at the end of the alt season last cycle. Okay, so this was when we were kind of all-time highs of Bitcoin and altcoins really outperformed, especially at the end. There's something called an Ethereum tsunami that comes in at the very end of every 4-year cycle. And so it put us all the way up here at almost at 0.088. Okay. And since that point, since December 21, we have had highs and lows all over the map, leading all the way down to 349 right now. And that is, we're getting right near a double bottom. We were just there about last month. And so, that is a massive move down. And that shows you why you need to be cautious at when you are holding Ethereum versus Bitcoin. And you can see here, this is a good example of last cycle, right? Back in 2019, which is really similar to the year we've been having this year with the 6-month consolidation sideways, you can see that, we went all the way down to valuations of 0.018. And arguably, this is going to continue to trend up with time, right? Ethereum is gaining market share every cycle on Bitcoin. And so I think the bottom is probably between 0.03 and here. I don't know where, maybe it could go a little lower than 0.03, but frankly, I think we're right near the bottom, and that's why I'm starting to buy big. And you can see then when the time comes, it outperforms by a ton on Bitcoin. And that's really what I think we're getting to right now. So that's why now, if you look at it, say, on a 6-month time frame, you can see it's just been a straight line down, right? It's been super, super aggressive move down. And that's different. You might say, oh, that's just happening to all altcoins. No, it's not. If you look at Solana, let's look at Solana on a 6-month. Look at this. This is range bound. This is not straight down. Super different from the other chart. And Solana arguably is Ethereum just a cycle newer. And Ethereum did this too. And likely it's kind of had a bunch of the gains it's going to have against Bitcoin for the cycle. And might even underperform Ethereum, even though it's a much smaller market cap for the alt season. So again, think back to Shopify, think back to Tesla. You want to buy when the valuation metrics of a stock in a sector is way, way lower than its peers. And right now that is Ethereum. So that's why I'm interested. Some other things going on in the market that are huge. You can see here the 3-month and the 10-year are about to uninvert. And that's important for bonds. That is something that we've been waiting for. The 10-year and the 2-year already uninverted a few months ago, but this is really the last uninversion we need to see. And usually when that uninversion happens, there's kind of some tenuous feelings in the market for a little bit. People get worried about recession for temporary moments. So it's something that, we're only 6 basis points away. It's probably going to happen in the next few days. I'll make a video about it when it does. And that could potentially be the final spook or shakeout that leads Bitcoin maybe to retracing back into the 80s or the low 80s, maybe even 74, test the prior breakout, and hopefully leads Ethereum back down to around $2,500. And that's where I'd be buying pretty much all in. Hopefully with the Ethereum BTC valuation much lower as well. The other thing to look at, the dollar has been on an absolute rip here. As you can see from October, it is up massively, and it's starting to get towards this breakout point. As you can see, like a multi-year, if it breaks 107 consistently for daily closes, it could be a big risk-off signal for a little bit. And again, I think that could lead to that flush out. The dollar is moving today. It's up another 0.5%. So those are some of the things I'm watching, and I think it means that, we're about to get kind of our last big scare, maybe a little bit of a pullback in stocks. I think stocks will do fine over the next year. I'm not predicting massive recession. Honestly, the data looks good. Inflation came in today at 2.6%, which is actually right in line with expectations. It's a little bit above September, but that's expected. It's going to go stochastically. But the Fed is still cutting its balance sheet and, still quantitative tightening. And I think that's going to weigh on Ethereum and altcoins more than Bitcoin. So I think alt season will probably start a little bit closer to when that flips, when we go back to quantitative easing. So that's why I'm making this big bet now. Again, if you missed the boat, right? If you did not own Bitcoin for this massive breakout, if you are feeling the FOMO of the market, look elsewhere than Bitcoin, right? And I'm not a meme coin guy. Frankly, I think Ethereum is plenty of risk for me, especially when I'm levering it. But I encourage you to look at Ethereum. I encourage you to look at things that are sold off, especially against Bitcoin, rather than just at the king for maybe another 30% gain. You could get that on plenty of stocks in a day. Shopify went 25% yesterday. So we're looking for real returns if we're going to take on this risk of the crypto market. And for me, it's Ethereum. I will keep you all posted as I really load the boat. If I get buys of 25K in a day, if we have a rip down, I'll let you guys know, because that's a lot of money, and at least for me. And I think it'll be fun for you guys to follow along as my emotions go up and down with that. I'm prepared for buying in and it continuing to dip for a few more months as well, and kind of watching it levered go down for a little while and being like, wow, I have lost 10K today. That's scary. So we'll keep talking about it. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, comment, and I hope you come back for the next one. Thanks.